Alright guys, what's up? It's been 4 months since the last video, man. Man, it's been so this is my 2 year update. 2 year update. So I'm gonna try to make this video short because the other one was like way too long. But okay, let's see. So let's start with like what I've done for the last 4 months and how much I've improved on too. Um, in terms of like what I've improved on, I've noticed like just reading light novels have gone like a lot easier. Um, my vocabulary went up. I mean, sort of a tozen show. And yeah, I think I'm at a point now of I'm at a point of diminishing returns in terms of like my comprehension. So I can improve my comprehension further, but I'm not gonna get a lot back, basically. You know, I've learned the majority of the more common rare words out there in Japanese that appear at least in anime, um, or like books and stuff. Um, but yeah, like I noticed reading books are like no problem now. Um, and yeah, and I'm at a pretty good point. I'm at a pretty good in terms of comprehension. So if I were to improve my Japanese, that would be in the output section. And all that really takes is just more speaking. Honestly, combining just doing more immersion plus speaking. But ever since then, guys, I've read a ton of light novels. Yeah, I finished 2 big series. Think last time I filmed this was Thanksgiving break. Yeah, so anyway, um, yeah. So after I recorded that video, I finished the whole series of Konosuba, um, that light novel, dude. That's like, there was so much like after the anime, like so much content, but man, like that series was funny till the end, bro. Like that light novel series is a solid like 9 out of 10. That was an amazing light novel series. But in terms of the words I learned, I actually like put him like on a sheet like from each anime like or with each like I collected like all the words I learned. So there weren't a lot of words I didn't know in Konosuba. Because surprisingly, it's not that hard of a light novel. But there were some pretty rare words in there. I noticed, like seko, roretsu. Um, I think this is read as Zente, Sente. Wait, let me. Yes, Sente. I haven't seen this word again, so I don't know if it's that important. Ganchiku. I've seen this word like a couple times. In Waisetsu. So this, out of the whole entire series, which is like 17 light novels. Yeah, these are like really the only words I learned. But then we have another light novel series I finished. Oregairu. Basically this super long title. But yeah, I mean, this light novel series, man, was it fucking long, dude. This series was so long, and look how thick this book is. This is the last volume, but like look how thick this is. This is like almost 500. This is like over 500 pages, you know. But like, this light novel now. It's funny because Classroom Elite I still consider as like the best light novel of all time. Because it was just pure blood boiling of hype, and then Konosuba was just like really funny in every aspect. This is more like chill. This really focuses more on the characters of, like Yuki no Shita and Yui, like in Hachiman, can Hikigaya, yeah, that's his name. But like it all focuses on their like kanke, and yeah, I mean it. I wouldn't really like binge this series, because to be honest, not a lot happens. You know, not a lot happens in the series. It's not you're not gonna be like you're not gonna be hyped over with this series basically. So I recommend just doing this series slowly. Now people say like it's like one of the best light novels. I wouldn't say it's like one of the best light novels out there. I mean it's pretty solid. I'll give this one an 8 out of 10 for the whole series. But I mean this light novel was pretty difficult. It had a lot of words that I didn't know. Well, when I mean a lot, I mean like probably like one or two every book. So yeah. But yeah, anyway, and I'm going into Mushoku Tensei. So I just bought like 12 volumes of the Mushoku Tensei. So they're coming here from Japan. But damn, like those books are so much more expensive because I guess they're not bunko. They're tankabo, which is a little bigger. So I'm just like, dude, like I don't know why they do that. Like the same with Slime, the Monogatari series, Mushoku. Like other volumes are so much like double the price of like a bunko because I don't know why. I just if you just kept it as bunko, it would have been so much cheaper to buy. But I don't know. But yeah, so those are the two light novel series. The main series I really I watched for. I mean, I finished since the past like 4 months. But I watched. I mean, I read one volume of the Monogatari series, and I will have to say that was the hardest light novel I've read. That one volume of the Monogatari series. There was a ton of rare words in there. Like for example, like there's doke. Never seen all these words. Bunsuire. Hakuin I think this is tandeki. Like this is like all these words like they don't. Yeah, tandeki. Keigan. I've seen this a couple of them. This word is actually I saw it in here a couple times. So Keigan was one of those like more important ones. Suki, and then keigai o setsuru. But like those words, man, like the Monogatari series was, yeah, I think it's in. I looked at like one of the most difficult light novels, and the Monogatari series was up there. So, yeah, pretty different. I mean, it's readable. Like I was able to understand like the majority of what was going on in the story. And those not knowing these words will not interfere with like the daitai no osuji, but it's still like pretty difficult in terms of like the words that are used in here. So yeah. Oh my god, yeah. I think I didn't mention, but I did watch Code Geass. And they use some freaking crazy words too. Like words I've never seen, like hijin, which means like ratification. Rokaku means like tsukamairu, and kogyo. I've never seen these words before. I mean after watching even Code Geass, like I've never seen these words again. So these are like really weird words. But yeah, so that's like kind of like a summary. And I've watched watched a couple anime, where I read a couple manga. Not too much manga though. I haven't read too much manga. It's mostly been light novels. And an anime here and there. But yeah, so I'll get into like I guess the advice. So yeah. So motivations and reasons to learn a language. Now it's gonna be different depending on like what you're learning language for. At least for me with Japanese, I'm learning the language for two things. I want to be able to like understand media in the language. So being able to read books, like understand anime, do all that stuff. And the other reason is to be able to speak Japanese, to be able to talk with my family, over in Japan. I want to be able to, connect with my Japanese family members, because that'll be really fucking useful to do. Because like it's been, I haven't been able to matomo na hanashi o, matomo na kaiwa o shita koto ga nai kara, I want to be able to actually, connect with these people. So, those are my two reasons. So understand, like, the media I want, and that's very specific, and be able to speak. Um, now I'm gonna, like, I think a lot of, especially with Japanese, I don't know if it's so much true for like other language, but I think with Japanese, people are so, like, concentrated on being perfect, with pitch accent, all that, and trying to, improve the Japanese for the sake of improving. You don't want to do this. This is what's gonna lead to burnout. Um, the reason why I have a big vocabulary is not because I aimed to get a big vocabulary. It just happened, right? You know, through, reading books that I like, and through watching anime, you know, it just happened. 勝手にした, right? Like, I didn't start learning Japanese with the intent of, like, getting a pretty high vocabulary. I did not do that. It just started to happen through the process, because one of my reasons was to be able to understand media. So the media I happen to like happened to be difficult, which happened to get me a pretty high vocabulary, So, but if you're not, like, really into reading books, like I am with French, I'm not into that, right? With French, um, my vocabulary's pretty low. I'm able to understand, like, videos at 1.5 speed, um, but that's the I do the minimum required to reach my goals. So you don't want to, once you, like, got what you wanted with the language, like, once you're able to speak at a pretty conversational level, once you're able to understand immediately, like, I think that's enough, and you don't need to improve further. There's none of this. You don't need to be perfect, because that's not the point. The point is the goal, right? Now, my second goal, being able to connect with my family members, there's two things I need to have with this. I need to, have a pretty good accent. So my pitch accent has to be pretty solid. It can't be all over the place. Um, but my pitch accent needs to be pretty good, and, so that's like accent, pronunciation, anything related to that, and my hanashikata. This is what I need to improve on. I think my pitch accent is pretty much like equivalent to native, so, like, I don't have to really worry too much about that. Cause, you know um, I've had, like, the same accent ever since, I learned Japanese. If you check, I have videos of me speaking Japanese when I was like 3 months in, and then you can have a video of me speaking Japanese now. The accent doesn't change. It did not change, because it it was native from the beginning. So I didn't really. So in terms of the accent, um, I can't really give advice with that, because I kind of cheated, right? Baby powers, right? So, but I can still improve my, um, way of talking, right? So I can rephrase things better. I can learn how to be more articulate. I mean, I think reading all these books in Japanese and knowing, like, a pretty, having a vast vocabulary really helps with you, being able to speak eloquently, um, and just knowing how to, like, ko- kotoba no tsukaikata is pretty important, and that's one thing I want to improve on when I go to Japan in the summer. So, yeah. Um, but anyway, you want to do the sai shogen. No, basically, what is your goal, and do the minimum to achieve that goal. Okay, that's important. With French, with me, I want to be able to, connect with people in France, and then I would, and, also enjoy, like, media too. The media I like in French is only YouTube, so because of that, I don't have to have a high vocabulary. That's the point. I'm not here trying to improve my vocabulary like crazy, because I don't need to, right? Because the content I like is in the conversational domain, where, as in Japanese, it goes off to, like, um, you know, understanding anime is pretty hard. So, or at least certain types of anime. So, having a high vocabulary is necessary for that. But if you're not into that, then that's not necessary. It's not necessary to learn high vocabulary. But anyway, yeah, like, yeah, I don't. So, you don't, and I don't think you need perfect pitch either. I think what's most important is, consonants and vowels. Get those freaking down. If you have perfect consonants, like, a, I, u, e, o, kakikuiko, you know, sashi suseso, if you can say those like perfectly, um, then like you're fine, dude. Um, and plus like learning pitches, yeah. So anyway, let's go to the next one. What I think about Anki and the SRS. So after learning two languages, um, this is like my opinion and my advice. Maybe if I learn a third language, my convictions will be solidified. But I'm pretty certain that this is basically how I'll summarize Anki, right? Um, you don't need to use Anki to learn a language, but it does help. So that's the big summarize, right? Now, Anki is useful for one thing, right? And that is to help your comprehension get to 95%. Now, that comprehension is going to differ, right? Because depending on what content you like, right, in that language, what media you like, the speed at which you get to 95% would differ for different media. So with Japanese anime, right, if you want to get to the point where you want to understand 95% of this, right, 95% of like a book or a pretty hard anime, you're going to need to use Anki for quite a while. Now, if you're like me with French, where the only content you really consume is like basically conversational stuff like YouTube, um, then using Anki, you're only gonna use Anki for a very short amount of time because you're gonna get to 95% in that content very fast. At least that's what my experience with French. I was able to get to 95% in French really fast because the content that I liked, was pretty simple, right? Compared to like books and anime, those take a longer time to get to 95%. Because now, why do I say 95%? Because once you get to 95%, you can learn new words through just immersing at that point, right? Through osmosis. You can just sit back, enjoy the show. I can watch like a YouTube video in French. I can go to on live streams and I can understand pretty much 95% of everything they're saying. So any words they just randomly say that I don't know, I'll be able to infer through context what that word means, which is the optimal state to be in for language acquisition. Steve Question says get comprehensive input, and his comprehensive input is understanding 95%. Now, obviously, that's extremely hard to get if you're like a beginner. So until you get to 95% in the content you like, keep using Anki, and it's going to be useful. Now, if you don't like Anki, if for some reason you hate Anki, then you don't need to use it. At least it matches. Anki matches with my personality, so I see benefits in Anki. Like every time I use Anki to understand like more, it like really helps. It really helps like keep the words in your brain, especially when you're dealing with hard content like anime, in light novels. Like if you want to be able to understand those light novels at a pretty high level, you got to use Anki for a pretty long time because you got to have a lot of those words in your brain, um, for a certain period of time before reading a lot would just solidify. So at this point, I don't really need to use Anki anymore, because if I just keep immersing, the rare words I already know right now will be solidified with Anki, with just reading more. So if I just read a lot, I'll continue to keep knowing those words. And yeah, so, but yeah, so that's what Anki, guys. But you have to identify what media you like, okay, and that's gonna determine what length you're gonna use Anki for, because if it's French like me, where your content is YouTube, that's pretty easy to understand. So you're not gonna use Anki for a while. But if your content is like books, then you're gonna be using Anki for a little bit while before you can get to 95%. Because 95% reading a book takes a pretty long time, right? So but if you're just conversation, live stream, YouTube stuff, that's pretty easy to understand. You don't need to use Anki for that. Well, you just need to use Anki for a little bit, right? Actually, with French, I haven't really used Anki You know, I mean, I used Anki, but I was never consistent. So I just kept deleting my deck like over and over again. I keep trying to use Anki with French, and I delete my deck every time. So I just decided to just not use Anki anymore because it doesn't. I'm not really needing it right now. Because the immersion I like, which is YouTube, I understand like 95% of the words they're saying. So, you know, it's really, it's pretty hard for me to come across a new word in French, at least for YouTube. Now, when it comes to French literature, like books, this is a different story. My comprehension is like nowhere clear, nowhere near like 80% even, like probably like 60%, 50%. You know, that's how hard French literature books are. So if I want to be able to understand those, you know, if I want to be able to understand French books, I'm gonna need to use Anki again. You know, because there's just way too many words I don't know. Like, there's so many words for in one page that I don't know. Like, and it's crazy. Like the jump between like live streams and like, you know, in YouTube and in books in French is crazy. Like, um. But anyway, okay, I'm gonna need to go real quick. All right, so just to check with the how much Anki cards I have. Like, this is after 2 years, guys. I only have 4,244 cards. It's only 4,000 cards, guys. So it kind of goes to show that you don't have to put every single card in Anki. But yeah, like only 4,000 cards after 2 years. Some people have like 10,000 cards, 7,000 cards. I only have 4,000 cards, guys. I'm at a point now where I probably don't need to use Anki anymore. So yeah. But here's the catch, guys. I only do like, my time with Anki does not exceed past 10 minutes. And here's how I did it, guys. You know, even now, like even if I did like, you know, 30 cards a day, my time on Anki wouldn't pass like 20 minutes. And it's because I use this retirement add-on, to where a certain point it'll retire, right? And for me, I put that point at 6 months. So if a card passes 6 months, you know, in the interval, retires, I never see it again. Now, people will be like, well, what if you forget that word, you know, because 6 months isn't a lot. But if I forget the word, I'll see it again and I'll just Anki it again. You know, it's that simple. You don't have to literally try to get to the teeth of every single, like, you know, a word, and, you know, you put an Anki. If you put a word into Anki and you forgot about it, and you put it on there, you can see, oh, you know, I put this word into Anki before. I guess I forgot about it. Let's do it again, you know. And then you just and you put it into Anki again. But I can tell you how many retired cards I have. I have 3,920 retired cards. Okay, I'll tell you how many cards are like in recycling right now from that number. So that means most of my cards are retired. I'm only reviewing like 324 cards right now. Only that much. The rest of the cards are retired. And to do the math, so 0.7%, I'm reviewing 0.7, yeah, 0.0% of the cards I have. So that goes to show, you don't have to review literally every single word, you know, you put it in your Anki, because there's going to be words you don't need to see again, no matter what. Like, even if you're in the beginning and you think you want to be able to know this word, you don't need to know it, okay? Because you're going to be wasting so much of your time reviewing cards you already know. Alright, so the most efficient way is to retire these cards and to not see them again after a certain point, because you got to keep going on with new cards. And it doesn't matter, you know, and I have forgotten some of these words. I've gotten, you know, a couple duplicates, you know, that I forgot this word that I put in before, but it's like, it's alright, okay? Because that's the process. You're going to forget some words, but you got to be comfortable with that, because that's just how it goes at the end of the day. So, and at a certain point, if I keep, you know, doing Anki, all my cards that I ever put in are going to be retired, and I want to not even need to do Anki anymore. So it's going to get to the point, because it's already at 0.07%. It's almost at zero. So yeah, I'll be done then, you know. And you guys got to be conscious of that you don't need to see all the cards you put in, because you're going to be wasting so much time, you know, reviewing. I think you only need to review the more recent cards you own. You know, you don't need to be reviewing any like the old cards, at all. So that's my advice with Anki, and that's when Anki, that's how you can keep your time with Anki at less than 10 minutes. Is if you do this retirement, add-on, I think it's Migaku. Yeah, if you download the Migaku add-on for the retirement, this is like the most useful thing you can ever put on Anki, okay? Because you don't need to review those crappy old cards, okay? It's not necessary. So yeah, guys. Because a lot of people think Anki is draining, and it is freaking draining if you do an hour a day or like even 30 minutes a day. That's pretty draining. No, you don't need to do that much, guys. You can do Anki. I recommend doing Anki because it's really helpful at getting the comprehension at 95%. But you only need to do like less than 10 minutes a day, guys. It's only less than 10 minutes. You just gotta put the retirement add-on on to make sure you cancel out all the old cards. So, yeah, that's my conclusion with Anki. Yeah. So the next one is, do you have to focus on one domain? Now in Refold, they really emphasize that you focus on, like a slice life domain. Now here's the problem with focusing on one domain is because it's the fact that it might be a little boring if you are interested in other domains like fantasy, because in anime they have so many domains. You know, slice of life, you know, sci-fi, you know, politics, and fantasy and stuff like that. Like there's just so many domains out there, and I've always been the type to literally like, you know, do every single domain. Like I would go from here, like one day I'll be like reading Berserk and the other day I'll be reading like this other slice of life, you know, romance thing. So it's, I really was all over the place. So I was never focused on the one domain. And because of that, what ended up happening was, you know, I was never a master at one domain, but I knew a lot of other domains and I was kind of comfortable with a lot of domains. So by the time I mastered one domain, I mastered all the domains. That's kind of my experience. You know, the moment one domain was like really like mastered and good, I ended up realizing that all the domains also were at a really high level. So instead of, you know, focusing on one domain, getting like 100% comprehension, and then you go to another domain and you like your comprehension drops, you kind of like, that's kind of demotivating because you're able to understand a lot with this domain, but when you go to this domain, then all of a sudden your comprehension drops, and it's kind of demotivating, and it feels like you're relearning language all over again. You know, that's kind of what it feels like, you know, when you try to transfer from really easy anime to like light novels, like even slice life light novels, you know, are pretty hard too, if you're not used to like reading books and stuff, like, you know, your comprehension is going to drop just because it's a book. It's inherently harder, you know, and I think it's better to just start with one of the hard ones first and have your goal understand the hard one so that when you go to the easy ones, it's just going to be easy, you know, and it's going to encompass everything. So you don't have to focus on one domain, guys. You want to keep it as fun as possible, okay? Because keeping it fun is, you know, it's the saizen saku da to omoimasu. You have to, you know, focus, you know, on one thing. I mean, like, you know, you gotta focus on having fun. Now, this leads on to the other thing, the myth that Japanese anime is not unnatural. This is, I have to like downgensu it because this is crazy, you know, because Japanese anime, their language is completely natural. What's unnatural, guys, is the situations they're in. So let's take some of the most unnatural language ever, which is Attack on Titan and like JoJo, for example. Those animes, they're very unnatural, and that's because the situations they're in are extremely unnatural. Like you would never be put in a situation like that those shows are put in, and because of that, it's unnatural, right? Because compared to Nichijou Kaiwa, the situations you in are gonna be like so different. You know, like when you're in like a gang fight, you know, of course you're not gonna be using like Kisama teme omae nani o shita nda yo. You know, maybe like when you're in a fight, you know, and you're on the verge of dying, you would use that kind of language they use in anime. because those situations happen frequently in that type of media. But you know, if you watch like a slice of life anime, the language that's going to be used there is going to be very natural. It's, ore ga iru, pretty natural. Like, and a lot of people say like, there's yakuwari go, like people say like, atashi wa, or like people end their sentences with like, gashira. I noticed Japanese people do that, like even my mom, like it was funny. I told her like, when do you use atashi, right? And she was like, we don't use it that often. But then I fucking proceed to hear her say that, like she uses atashi sometimes. I'm like, didn't you just say like, y'all guys don't use this as much, or something? And it's like, well, apparently my mom uses it, so I guess it's not an anime thing. Or like, Mishioku ni goze, like that phrase can be used. I confirmed it with my mom, like, who's a native speaker. So, and that, it's like, so what I started to thought, like, what I thought was anime phrase could also be used in real life, So, just the fact that learning anime, like, you shouldn't learn from anime because it's unnatural is just kind of absurd. Because, like, the language they use is natural. The situations aren't. So, of course, the phrases they're going to use in anime are going to be unnatural because the situations are unnatural. That's pretty much what it comes down to. What's more unnatural than anime are the textbooks. That the type of Japanese they use in textbooks are more unnatural than that. So that's kind of like my conclusion with when it comes to like anime and stuff. It's like, guys, I mean, dude, like for example, so with French, I learned entirely through like natural content. So that means like people talking like normally in day-to-day like street life. Because like if you go on YouTube, like that's how they talk, in normally. So I'm really like refined with that type of language. And then when I go and watch like a French TV show where it's not like completely natural, but it's also fine to learn from that too. So it's like it's the same with anime. It's fine to learn from those. What matters the most, guys, is increasing comprehension. You have to first have comprehension, okay? Because you can't worry about speaking if you can't understand the language first. So anime is a good tool to learn how to understand, not speak. There's a difference. Anime is a good tool to learn how to understand the language, not speak. The best way to learn how to speak, and if you don't know how they speak in Japan, the best source for that is to speak to them. Just period. You're not gonna know what's unnatural and natural until you actually go speak to people. And that's very kotsugo because you want to be able to practice your output too. So not only can you practice your output, but you can also practice and distinguish what's unnatural and natural, right? Or what people call unnatural and natural, right? What that really means is the situations, like in what situations. That's what you got to be looking for. What situations is appropriate? See, it's about being appropriate. The anime words, phrases they use, a lot of it's inappropriate in a lot of nichijou kaiwa because you're not in a situation like that. But so that's why if you're gonna speak to someone, like if you're gonna speak to a Japanese person, pay attention to how they respond to you, because how they respond to you is that so-called natural Japanese, and that's how you're gonna learn that natural Japanese is speaking to people. That's how you're gonna learn it. But you first have to have a base, and you're gonna first have to understand how to understand Japanese, right? You gotta learn how to understand, learn how to learn Japanese first, before you can worry about like what's natural or not natural. So, and anime is a good source to learn how to understand Japanese. So, yeah, that's my conclusion. And I'm gonna go to Japan to test this, like, because one of my cousins speak Kansai Ben, and right now I have no exposure to Kansai Ben, but I bet you not. If I start to speak with this dude every day, I'm going to naturally develop Kansai Ben accent. And it's not because I immersed in it, it's because I spoke with this person. But when I go to Japan, we're going to see if, like, my Japanese turned into Kansai Ben, or if it's, like, a mix of Tokyo and, we'll see. But, I think the people you talk to, you're also going to mimic their speech and you're going to repeat that back. That's just how language works, you know. So, but you first have to learn how to understand Japanese. So, you know, anime is fine for that, you know, or anything. So, now let's go to the next topic: maintaining or learning two languages. Um, so, the languages I know, you know, like French and Japanese. It's weird because the way I recommend it is I do not recommend taking two languages from scratch that you don't know and learn them at the same time. That is super inefficient. Okay, guys, you want to focus on one language, all right? And how did I learn French and Japanese? Um, Now, French was my first language, if you guys didn't know, and I immersed for French for like 9 months, and after 9 months, I got to like a pretty good level of understanding of French, and that's when I started to move to Japanese, right? Um, and when I moved to Japanese, I didn't immerse in French. I only focused on Japanese. Um, in fact, there was a period, in my Japanese where I did zero French immersion for 9 months. Guys, I literally like, I just focused only on Japanese, right? For 9 months, only Japanese, no French. And when I came to French, when I came back, I noticed my French didn't decay as fast. Like it did not. Like I immersed again, and I was like, oh, I still understand this language. Like what the freak? It felt like nothing happened. It felt like time stopped, and my French didn't decay. I think that's the thing with French, guys, is that French like was really hard to forget. It's really hard to forget French or a language like Spanish that that's very close to English or something. It's very easy to maintain those languages. Now I don't think this would have worked with Japanese. I think if I would have taken 9 months off of Japanese, I probably would have forgotten some stuff. Now with French, it's a different story because they're so similar that like it's almost impossible to forget French, unless you don't touch it in like 10 years or something like that. But yeah, like French was really hard to like forget. So that's the benefit. At least one of the languages I know, like it's really hard to forget. But Japanese, I've always been immersing the entire time, so because of that, I wasn't able. I've always maintained Japanese. But right now, I'm immersing in like French and Japanese. Just watching French YouTube videos, and then when I feel like it, like read some Japanese books, and watch some anime and stuff. So it's like, it's been like this for like a pretty long time. For like, I think it's been like this for like 9 months now. Just immersing in both languages, and just getting better in both. Honestly, and I'm at a point now with these two where the content I like is pretty much almost at 100%. So, yeah, pretty satisfied. Same with my French. I can improve my output. And that's just really because I haven't spoken as much as I've inputted. But I have the good base. I have the input of French and Japanese. So when I go to the country and speak, obviously that's going to activate really well. And I'm able to learn how to speak really fast, and learn speaking like at a pretty high rate. But yeah, so that's what that I recommend, focusing on one. So like, get one to basic fluency, and then like, ignore the other one and then raise the other one. So that's the idea with French. It's French, you get it to basic fluency, then you go to another language and you get that to basic fluency, and then you can do both at the same time, right? Because I think once you get a basic fluency, then that's when you have the yo-yu to like learn both at the same time. Is when both of the languages are basic fluency. You have the yo-yu to like immerse in both. Now obviously it's always going to be better to focus on one language. Of course, that's atarimai, right? It's of course if you focus on one language, you're going to get better at that one language. But I'm talking about like, how can you minimize the damage done when learning two languages? And the damage is most when you try to learn two languages from scratch. When you learn two languages from scratch, that's when the efficiency goes down like crap, But if you have two languages that, you know, at a basic fluency, you can combine, and, you know, you can immerse in these two anytime, and you get better at both slowly. And because of your basic fluency, it's not going to decay as fast. My Japanese is at a level where it's probably not going to decay if I just stop immersing in Japanese for a year. I'll probably be fine. You know, I'll probably I won't forget Japanese. It's because I reached it at a pretty high level. I mean, I think it's above basic fluency even. So because of that, I can kind of just chill on it. But yeah, so, you know, that's my opinion. You got to focus on one language, and get that up to basic fluency, you know, before you have any yo-yu to do like both at the same time. Now, this one is pretty controversial, and this is why I think having a perfect accent is actually possible. Now, I don't think it's healthy to like try to make your language perfect. You know, you don't need to be perfect in a language. Like I said, you have to have a reason to learn the language and do the minimum that achieves your goals, your reasons and motivations. So, if your goal is to speak the language, then once you're at basic fluency, whether you have a perfect accent or not, it doesn't matter. It's because you reached your goal, right? You do the minimum to reach your goal. All right, that's what's most important. And now, with having a perfect accent, with Japanese, I can't really say anything with pitch accent because I acquired pitch accent naturally, just as any native would. So I never had the kudo to like rewire my brain to, you know, be able to hear pitch because I could already hear pitch from the beginning. So because of that, that's why my accent is pretty much equivalent to native in Japanese already. It's because I never like none, you know, I didn't really kudo suru, right? Now I can say that with French though. With French, I remember clearly I had to start from zero. French, I had to completely start from zero. I was having a hard time with the accent, with like the pronunciation, because French pronunciation is pretty hard. You know, you have to train it. Now, here's why I think my French accent is really good. And I think it's because I've listened. I've only listened in French. I have not done any reading in French. And because of that, my entire ability of French to understand French, and, you know, comes entirely from listening, not from reading. I've barely done any reading in French. And because I learned French up to basic fluency through only listening, that trained my ears in a way where it was able to hear all the sounds. You know, I basically trained my ears really well. You know, when the only thing you do is listen, and you only have your ears to rely on, and not the text, then your ears really end up blooming, right? And it becomes really easy to like understand super fast speech. So I'm able to understand, you know, that's why I watch YouTube videos or live streams in 1.5 speed. You know, and I understand effortlessly is because, you know, I've put into practice, you know, thousands of hours of practice, you know, of listening French. And because of that, the accent just naturally comes in. Now, there's 2つの条件が, you know, が必要だと思います. You know, I think you have to have, if you want to have a perfect accent, you have to meet these two conditions. So the first condition is to listen a lot. Like, just like I said, like, do no reading. Basically, you gotta only listen and try to get to basic fluency through listening alone. Now, I don't think that is enough. The other joking is you have to actually try and mimic and train pronunciation, like, separately from language. Like, this is not immersion. This is, you sit down and you take like a native recording and you try to mimic their accent, and you try to mimic, you know, like what I remember doing this so much times with French. I would take like a French audio, like song, and I would just try to mimic and try to exactly copy their accent with the, you know, exactly how they say it, you know. And this is how I think is the best way to like actually get a good accent once you have good ears. Once you have good ears, then when you try to train it, it's gonna be really easy to like get a good accent through that. And I think if you have these two things, like, your accent is pretty much almost perfect at that point, you know, because You did a lot of listening, so your ears are bloomed, and then you did the other hard work, which is to get your mouth moving to be able to, produce the sounds. Um, and in order to be able to produce the sounds and know that the sounds are right, you have to have good listening. And good listening comes from doing a lot of listening from the beginning. Now, I have to emphasize this. It won't work if you've already done a ton of reading and then you go to listening. Because it's not going to be the same type of listening anymore. Because you're going to know so much of the language already that when you go to listening, it's going to be able to, because of your knowledge of the language, it's going to be able to fill in for your lack of hearing. So it's going to compensate. Your knowledge is going to compensate for your lack of hearing. And I say hearing because hearing is is separate from understanding. It's being able to hear the sounds. But if you do only listening from the beginning and you learn entirely through listening for the first year or two, then you only have your ears to rely on, and you don't have any knowledge of the language to rely on, like reading, for example. So because of that, your ears get trained a lot more, and your ears, it's more necessary for your ears to open up because you don't have any context to aid you, like reading. That's why if I were to do an experiment, so if we were to say it takes 6,000 hours to get fluent in a language, and person A did 3,000 hours of listening and then 3,000 hours of reading after, versus person B who does 3,000 hours of 3,000 hours of reading first, and then 3,000 hours of listening. I think the person who does 3,000 hours of listening first will get the better accent, even though they both read and listened at the same, for the same amount of hours. I think the person that started with 3,000 hours of listening has the advantage because it's about timing when it comes to getting an accent, guys. You can't catch up with your listening once you've done already a lot of reading, because your reading is going to help aid your listening comprehension, but not in a way that you want it to. Like I said, it's going to be able to compensate for your lack of hearing. So your ears aren't actually going to need to fully open up because you're going to have a lot of knowledge from reading. That's why doing a lot of listening while you still suck at the language is important. That's the key. You have to do a lot of listening while you suck. See? There's a difference, right? If you do a lot of listening while you suck, your ears are going to it's going to be forced to open up and hear the sounds when you do a lot of listening while you still suck. See, if you get too good with reading, then your ears are not going to be forced to bloom all the way because it's going to be able to already understand a lot through listening because of your reading. So it's all about timing, guys. But I think even if you're in a situation where you can't improve your your hearing through just listening, that's when I'm recommend, okay, go get Audacity and focus only on the sounds, try to mimic the native speakers, and that's how you can improve your accent that way. If you really want to improve it though, you have to want to, I feel accent is also a lot about will. You want to, if you don't care about your accent, you're probably not going to get a good accent because you're not going to care that much, right? But if you care about having a pretty good accent, then you're going to end up having a good one, So I think a lot of it has to do with will. People that say they don't care about the accent or it's not important, those are the people that probably don't have as good of an accent as someone who cares about it. So it's about will too. It's not, you can listen to me and say yeah, I'll do a ton of listening in the beginning, but if you don't actually care what you sound like, it's just kind of muimi, right? So that's my advice with the accent. Do a ton of listening while you still suck, and then after that do some training with your mouth and try to mimic some native speakers and maybe get feedback, but yeah. So now the other thing is prioritize having fun. Okay, this is the biggest message. Okay, if you're gonna take anything from this, it's prioritize having fun. You can have the most effective method, but it's pointless if you're not having fun and it's not enjoyable because you're not gonna want to keep doing it. You know what the most important thing with language, when it comes to learning a language, you know what the most important thing is? It's not the method. It's not, you know, it's not really necessarily like the tools or the resources. That's not the most important thing when it comes to learning a language. The most important thing is to continue. And how do you continue? You continue when you have fun. See, if you're having fun with what you're doing, then you will continue to immerse in language. That's why I hate when people say, don't use anime to learn Japanese because it's like unnatural and crap. For some people, watching anime is like really fun, and it makes learning Japanese really fun. And if you're gonna take that fun away, it's gonna be so much harder to learn a language, you know. So you gotta think about that, guys. All right. Prioritize having fun, okay? Because this is the most important thing that can, you know. You must have fun, you know. I like watching anime, so you know I watched anime, a ton of anime, to learn Japanese. Most of my Japanese is from anime, and I was able to get to this point of my ability because I was having fun, you know. That's why if you don't like using Anki, then kind of forget about it. If it's draining, if 10 minutes of Anki is draining, then don't do it, okay? Because what you have to, now for me, I like using Anki because I didn't like the idea of coming across a new word and not, you know, not like mining it, you know, not putting it into Anki, because I was like, I'm probably gonna forget this word, so just to make sure I know this word, I'll put it into Anki, and that was fun for me, you know, that was okay, because it was only 10 minutes a day of Anki, so, you know, this word is gonna retire, you know, after 6 months, you know, and that was enough to have the word retain anyway, so it was fine, you know, but prioritize having fun. Even, this is gonna be rare. I don't think a lot of you guys are like this, but if immersing is not fun, and you think doing a bunch of grammar drills is like fun for you, and you want to learn the language the way they consciously do it in classes, if that is fun for you, then keep doing it. Okay, now I don't agree with this. This is really ineffective because obviously immersion is how you do it, right? But remember, like I said, it's not the resources or the tools that are the most important. It's that you continue. That's important. So if you're going to continue by doing the method that you like, then just keep doing it. Because you eventually get to the point where you can be like, you know what? Maybe immersion is helpful. And you're going to go try it anyway. You're going to be coming full circle anyway. But what matters is that you continue. That's what matters, right? Because if you continue, then that's where progress is made, you know, whether you're using like a terrible method or not. Now, luckily, the type of method I like, which is immersion, happens to be really effective. So I'm grateful for that. So, you know, what was, you know, also really efficient was also pretty fun. And now for this is for most people, like immersion is a lot more fun than doing like, you know, Anki or like, you know, grammar drills or anything like that, you know. Immersion is where the fun is, and that is the most effective, you know, out of all the methods. So just prioritize on having fun, guys, okay? People can say whatever they want with pitch accent, like, just have fun, guys, okay? Because that's what's most important. You know, I'm at a point now in my Japanese where the only way I can have fun with Japanese is if what I'm consuming is fun. You know, like I can't watch a crap anime anymore and enjoy it because I already understand everything now. So I'm not gonna improve a lot from, you know. I remember like it was the fact that I was improving in Japanese that was also pretty fun. You know, it wasn't just the content itself. It was the fact that I was improving. So now the improving is pretty hard, and it's hard to improve now. And with anime, it's kind of, I have to like find something I enjoy, you know. And the show can only entertain me, not the language. So I've arrived at a destination, but I felt at the end of the day, it kind of sounds cliche, but the journey is just as important, right? um so enjoy zonbun ni tanoshime, um just enjoy the process of learning the language, because you're not going to understand the language the same way you understand it, in a couple months or years later, because you're going to understand more. You're going to keep getting better anyway. So the ability you have right now, you're not going to have forever, because it's going to just keep going and keep improving. So just enjoy, if you still suck at the language, enjoy that you still suck, because you're not going to suck anymore. And when you're at a point where you don't suck anymore, you're not going to have an improvement, because it's going to be hard to improve. So it's about the journey, guys. It's how you get to the point that matters. So yeah, hopefully this video was like shorter. But I mean, yeah. I mean, like, this is like pretty much the advice I can give. Just have fun. But anyway, I'm gonna go to Japan pretty soon. And I'll try to do some output videos and stuff like that in Japanese to practice output while I'm in Japan. So yeah, look forward to that too. But anyway, Johnny.